Hello, everyone. Welcome to our ACSM Certification Monthly Webinar. My name is Francis Narek. I'm the Associate Vice President of Certification and Credentialing for ACSM. Today's webinar will be focused on what inclusive fitness is, why it's important, and how exercise professionals can expand their client base to be more inclusive of people of all abilities. Today's presenters are Dr. Amy Bantham and Mr. Mike Alpert. Amy is the CEO and founder of Move to Live More, a research and consulting firm addressing physical inactivity, obesity, and chronic disease through cross-sector collaboration and innovation in healthcare, health, and fitness and communities. Amy is a certified health and wellness coach, personal trainer, and group exercise instructor, and holds a Doctor of Public Health from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Mike Alpert has been in the health club industry for 32 years. Mike is currently the COO of Smart Health Clubs, an all-in-one member engagement platform. Because of his passion for the chronically injured and chronically ill, Mike has been presenting exercise medicine to universities and organizations internationally, including Israel, Ireland, and Spain. As a bit of housekeeping, the recording will be provided to all those who registered, and we'll be tracking your questions in the chat, and we'll answer questions at the end of the webinar. Without further delay, Amy and Mike, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Francis. We are so happy to be here today to talk about inclusive fitness. It is a shared passion of Mike's and mine. I think we met and first started speaking about inclusive fitness about, well, many years ago. I think it was 2006, Mike. So we're pleased to be here today. Next slide, please. Our goal for you as our audience today is to learn the what of inclusive fitness, what it is, the why of inclusive fitness, why it's important to your clients and members, to your business, and how you can move forward and expand your client base to be more inclusive of people of all abilities. Next slide, please. We have 3 learning objectives for our 45 minutes together today, and we'll leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end as well to take us to the top of the hour. Really, our 3 learning objectives are focused on 1, inclusion, recognizing what inclusion means for those of us who are working with or considering working with diverse populations. The second learning objective is case studies, and we'll talk about real-world case studies, and Mike has wonderful, robust examples of why inclusion is important for impacting the health and well-being of clients and members, and for impacting the health and well-being of our businesses. Our third learning objective is a roadmap and providing a path forward for you to gain clients by meeting the needs of diverse populations like people with disabilities and chronic conditions. Next slide, please. So first we'll spend some time talking about the what of inclusion. So inclusive fitness is about providing to people with disabilities the same opportunities to participate in programming and services as their peers without disabilities. And so inclusive fitness in a health and fitness setting is about accessibility. It's about universal design and infrastructure and equipment. It's also about inclusion in all aspects of the health and fitness setting. It's about representation in who's working in the club, who's frequenting the club or studio. It's about the images used in marketing. It's about the images used on the walls. It's about the language that's used in the club. It's about the mission, vision, and value statements that the studio might use. It's about really very targeted chronic condition specific programming and services, and Mike will share some really important examples over his career of this type of programming for cancer, for spinal cord injuries, for spina bifida. And so I'd love to, Mike, really just get very concrete about what inclusion can look like in a health and fitness setting.
Sure. Well, thanks, Amy. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you. I think it's important to start out to tell you how it became a passion for me. In 1990, I became involved with a small group of people in developing a very large multi-use athletic club in Central Oregon. We opened that club in 1991, and the following year, a woman came to see me who had had a severe traumatic brain injury. And her name's Barbara Buchan. She, I think, is the only person to ever win gold medals in 5 consecutive Paralympics. She wanted to start a program for severely physically challenged children and wanted to start it in our club. And we agreed to do that. And that's when I met a young boy who was 5.5 years old by the name of Gabe West. And I remember when his mother brought him in to the club, he had spina bifida. And she didn't really know what he would be able to do at the club because he was confined to a wheelchair. And we had built a pool, a 6-lane, 25-meter pool in our club. And we got creative. If you're in the health club business and you have water in your facility, you know that your members either think it's too hot or too cold. The competitive swimmers want the pool at about 80 degrees, and people that are recreating or that have problems with circulation want it much warmer. So we built our pool in a way where we had a wall that came through the middle of the pool, came about 2.5 feet above the water line, and it divided 2 lanes from the other 4 lanes. We had 2 heating elements, so we could accomplish that. We could keep 4 lanes for lap swimmers and 2 lanes for recreation swimmers. The reason I mentioned that is that this young boy that had this neuromuscular paralysis problem with his spine had very poor circulation. And so if he was in a community pool, about 5 minutes into being in that pool, his lips would turn blue and he'd be shivering. And so in our pool, he could be in for an hour. So we started out, I started working with him, and twice a week when he came in, I'd put on a swimsuit, get in the water with him and play with him, hold him and move him around, teach him how to do somersaults. You know, I'd hold him and flip him over, and he felt buoyant, felt like his hips had movement. And it was an amazing experience for me, because here as a grown man, I'm meeting a 5.5-year-old little boy that's got a lot of issues and a lot of challenges in his life. And every time he would get in the pool with me, he would hug me and kiss me. And it had a real gripping effect, to say the least. And I would oftentimes look over at his mother, who was on the deck, and tears would be running down her face, because her son, as I said, that had so many problems, was happy to be a kid again. And so what occurred to me is that if we could have this kind of an impact on a little boy that had all these medical issues, why were we not doing more of this, and as part of just our culture and our purpose of being in business? And then I started to worry about adults that had these problems, people that had long-term battles with cancer, people that had Parkinson's, somebody's grandfather that had a stroke. What happened to these people after they got through their traditional medical care? And what I found out, and it was embarrassing, was that in so many cases, they were just written off and forgotten. They were sent home to live with their issue. And I also found out that, you know, health insurance doesn't go on forever and ever and ever. When you're working with people with paralysis, you know, the average person with a spinal cord injury will go through $2 to $3 million of expense on their own during the lifetime of somebody that's paralyzed in their family. So it just became a very passion of mine, and I got to see the impact that using exercise in a social setting, away from the hospital, away from the clinic, the powerful effect it had on children and adults, and it just became a part of everything we did.
Great, thanks, Mike. I always remember the story that you shared about this young boy as really the spark of your thinking about what inclusion could look like, because you had the ability to have such a profound impact because you had the pool that you could have at the right temperature for him. So I do want to talk a bit about infrastructure and design when we get to the how. I want to make sure we come back to that. And you touched on community and having a place for people with disabilities to come and access these types of programming and services. So I want to move next to really the why of inclusive fitness. Next slide, please. When I first started working on inclusive fitness, I really didn't understand the extent to which so many people in the world are touched by disability. And about a quarter of the world's population are touched either directly or indirectly by disability. And there are a lot of headlines in the newspapers today about the fact that the world's population has crossed 8 billion. And it's really incredible to me that there are 1.5 billion people worldwide living with a disability. So there's a very, if you look at it from a business perspective, there's a very large market of people with disabilities who can benefit from the type of programming and services that Mike has talked about and will talk about today. And it's a population that needs and wants our programming and services. Mike, you mentioned the mother with the tears coming down her cheeks, seeing this type, the profound impact that this type of really programming was having on her child. And when we look at, Mike, you and I know so well the statistics on the number of the percentage of the population that meets physical activity guidelines, that is considered active. And then we look at the population of people with disabilities, and they are there are 2 times twice as many people with disabilities who are inactive compared with their peers who don't have disabilities. And we know the rates of inactivity in that population. So it's a very inactive population. But when people with disabilities are surveyed, they report that 81% of them report that they want to be more active than they are. So it's a large market with a real appetite and need for the type of programming and services that we as fitness professionals offer. Yet they experience even more barriers to accessing our programming and services than the general population, who talked about, don't have enough time, no transportation to a health and fitness setting, not a welcoming, inclusive environment. So we're going to talk a lot today about how to create the welcoming and inclusive environment. And then lack of confidence or even self-efficacy, the belief in the ability to be more active. And so it's really a market that we as an industry are not currently and sufficiently serving. So what Mike and I really want to leave you with today is a roadmap forwards for how you can best meet the needs of this population. There was a survey that talked about current health and fitness studios and the percentage of their membership that are people with disabilities, and it's very low. Over half of health and fitness studios report that they have 10% or fewer members with disabilities, and almost a third of health and fitness studios report that they have no members with disabilities. So how can we change that, and why? Why should we change that? And it's really important for the health and well-being of this population. And Mike and I have learned through my research and Mike's real world experience the impact that expanding access to people with disabilities can have on culture, on sense of community, on staff retention, on member retention. I want to give a few statistics that come out of a survey that was done of health and fitness studios that had begun offering inclusive fitness programming and services. So I'm going to read a few statistics, and then Mike is going to make these statistics come alive for you. So 67% of clubs and studios that implemented inclusive fitness practices reported an enhanced image of their club and studio among the membership and the general public. 81% reported an expansion of diversity in their membership base. 72% reported increased member loyalty to their club and studio. Over half reported increased revenue. And when the general public was surveyed, 90% said that they would be more likely to support a business that was inclusive of people with disabilities. So I've talked a little bit about numbers, Mike. I would love to talk first about the why of inclusion for culture and community. And you and I talk a lot about culture and community. It is very hard to change and measure culture, but you found that inclusive fitness practices had a really profound impact on your culture. Can you speak to that?
Well, sure. It actually became our culture. The experience, I guess the experience I had working with children and adults at our facility in Oregon truly changed my life forever. It had an impact that's hard to explain to people other than to just say it really gave me a sense of purpose. And I felt that if it could give me a sense of purpose, it could certainly give the people I was fortunate to work with that same sense of purpose. You know, we're all blessed to work in this industry, and most of us work in facilities that people would give their left arm to come into and enjoy on a daily basis. The unfortunate reality is that people with these chronic illnesses and injuries, in most cases, can't afford to even walk in the front door. So, you know, it became a question to all of our staff, you know, do you want a job or do you want to change lives? Do you want to save lives of people and give mothers and fathers that have children with problems and disabilities, or a spouse or a loved one with a disability? Do you want to give them hope and acceptance and possibilities, and do you want to do it in our facilities? And it just became a way of life for all of us. You know, in 2005, I took several managers to an IRSA convention, and I remember taking my wellness director, Denise Johnson, to see a talk that Julie Main, a colleague and friend of mine, gave on a program she had started in Santa Barbara at her clubs, Will Hospital in Santa Barbara, for women with breast cancer, called Cancer Well Fit Program. And we were so taken with her talk and moved by it that I went up to Julie afterwards and I asked her if she'd be willing to share her template with us and let me customize it for our club and offer a similar program in Claremont, California. And the gracious, kind person she was, she obviously agreed to do that. And she unfortunately, she served as the president of the IRSA board for a while, and she unfortunately passed away from her breast cancer. But her generosity allowed us to offer that program and deliver that program and help over 1,300 women and their families improve their overall quality of life and actually help with their recovery and going through the treatment process of their cancer. So that led to many other programs. You mentioned the spinal cord and neuromuscular paralysis program that we ran at the club in what became a 7,000 square foot studio that was expanded 3 times, that was treating, over 117 people with spinal cord injuries, cerebral palsy, multiple sclerosis, traumatic brain injury, multiple sclerosis, and a lot of other neuromuscular challenges, Parkinson's, diabetes, all those programs that we ran at the club. So I just know that we created a culture at our club that became very contagious and had buy-in from all 251 staff and all 10,000 members.
Mike, you talked about how it truly became your culture. How did you see the impact of that on your staff in particular? You mentioned their buy-in. Tell us more about the impact on staff.
So, success in business has never been really rocket science for me. I mean, you have to do the basic things. You have to understand the financial part of the business, be able to understand and work on budgets and income statements and balance sheets and all those things. But you really have to create a culture that gives your staff meaning and purpose in their work. So I think taking people from good to great and taking companies from good to great is all about creating and maintaining meaningful, purposeful work. And this kind of culture, these programs and these things we ran created that. It was really the secret sauce. It really proved that you can't just look at your bottom line. You have to understand what moves the bottom line, and people move the bottom line. And when you inspire and motivate people with your culture, they make the impossible possible, and they move mountains. And that's exactly what happened. We had people, the majority of our staff were hourly paid people. And I think we all know that our industry is not the highest paying industry in the world. Most of these people have opportunities to go elsewhere for more money, but they stayed at our club. I mean, our staff attrition was around 8.5% a year. And that's amazing. The member attrition was, 15.5 to 17.5% every year. And I can get into that and talk a little bit to that, because we did all the things that most other clubs do. We painted the walls, we brought in new equipment, customer service was great, the club was spotless. What really made the difference? And we started to ask people, members and staff, and it all came back to that sense of community giving and that sense of inclusiveness.
In the past, you've talked about really not only did staff have buy-in, but it also gave them agency for coming to you and saying, I would love to do this type of inclusive fitness program. So it really empowered them to become more engaged. Can you speak more to that?
Well, we made it a point to make sure that every single day of the week, that everybody at the club, every staff person knew that these programs existed and survived only because of them, because of their hard work, their commitment, their input to us of how we could do things differently and better. As a coach and teacher, which most owners, CEOs, COOs of companies, certainly in the health club business, our real titles are really coach and teacher. And so, you always want to develop people that are better and smarter than you and give them ownership and listen to their ideas and encourage them to create and give input. So it was really the staff that did the heavy lifting, and they knew it. And it just changed everybody's lives. I mean, when you see a little girl or a young boy with a bandana on their head because they're going through chemotherapy and they've lost their hair, or you see somebody in a wheelchair working out next to somebody on a treadmill, it changes people. It makes a difference. And that's what I can tell you about that. I'd like to give you an example of that if I can, Amy. Excuse me. I want to talk about a young man by the name of Jason Smoot. When I met Jason, he was in his late 20s. He came to our Perfect Step, our spinal cord program at the club. Jason had dove into a pool and had suffered a C4, C5 complete spinal cord injury, which meant that he was paralyzed from the chin down. He could only move a power chair that he was in by blowing through a tube. And he started coming to the club and working out with us. And I remember one day about a year after he came in, going down to the studio, and his father was sitting on a sofa in the studio, and he had his head in his hands. And I sat down next to him and I asked him what was going on. He told me about Jason's life. So Jason's existence was kind of this. His father got him out of bed at about 7:30 in the morning, put him on the toilet to have a bowel movement, changed his catheter, cleaned him, put him back in his power chair and fed him. And then he did the same thing at noon and the same thing at dinner time, and then he put him to bed. And that was Jason's life. So Jason had been taken off the field, so to speak, and he had lost his purpose. And when I was talking to his dad that day, he told me that since coming to the program and being in the program for a year, he was getting his strength back in his arms. He could actually do a front press with a 2.5 pound dumbbell with his right arm, and he was getting the use of his left arm back. But his father was worried that he was so depressed that he thought if he got use of both of his arms, he might try to take his own life. That's how depressed this young man was. And, you know, I went up to Jason right then and there, and I asked him, I don't know why it came to me, but I asked him if he wanted to come to work at the Claremont Club. Now, we didn't have a job for Jason. I didn't know what he could do. And without even looking at me, he said, Mike, I can't do anything. I can only blow through this tube to move my chair. My goal is to be able to get enough strength in my right arm so that I can use an iPad. And it just occurred to me, I just said to him off the top of my head, I asked him if he could read stories to children. And he thought about it for a couple minutes and he said, well, I think I could try that. So we hired Jason to come into work anywhere between 1 and 3 hours, 2 times a week when he came in for his workout at the Perfect Step, and read books to 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-old boys and girls in one of our childcare areas. Now, you know, for us, if we had a job that was 6 hours at maximum a week, we'd be pretty depressed. But for Jason, that gave him a little bit of purpose again. And magic happened because when he got into childcare and he started to read to kids, kids loved him. And kids didn't see his legs, they saw his heart and his soul. And it changed everybody. Everybody that worked in childcare, everybody that worked in that club, I don't think there were 2 weeks that ever went by where a mother or father or grandparent didn't come up to someone on our staff and thank them for having Jason at the club. And you know, when we'd oftentimes say, well, you don't have to thank us. It's our pleasure. What's there to thank? The answer was always the same. The answer was always that my son or my daughter is learning empathy and compassion and acceptance. And they're not learning it at school. They're learning it here at your club because of Jason. So it just, I mean, it was magic. So we started hiring people with disabilities to work, you know, a few hours a week at the front desk in childcare throughout the club. And the impact it had on the community at large and on the members and the staff was hard to explain, but it was powerful.
I love that story. It really speaks to culture, the impact on staff, fellow staff, and members, and the importance of representation. Mike, you've talked a little bit about the business benefit of this type of culture change on staff retention. I think you said 8% on member retention. Can you speak about why inclusive fitness practices are important for the health of your business? And I've heard others say you made money by accident by doing the right thing.
Yeah, so I'll answer both of those questions, Amy. Let me start with the making money by accident, because every time you and I, or I've done a talk, someone will ask me always, how do I make money at this? Usually my answer is, if that's your motivation, don't do it. You're not the right fit. But the reality is that I told you in 2015, our member attrition dropped from 23.5%, which is where it had been from about 1998 until 2015, which was pretty good still by industry standards. But it dropped from 23.5% to 15.5% in 1 year. And that was the year that our staff attrition dropped to 8.5%. And we couldn't understand it. You know, we weren't doing anything that different. We didn't know what was causing that drop. So we started to ask both members and staff. Members continually told us that we had created a sense of shared values at our club, and they attribute it specifically to the special programs we were running and the employment opportunities we were giving to people that had physical and emotional challenges. And that 8% drop in attrition for 1 year, when you took our average dues and average non-dues, which combined were about $289 a month, that amounted to a little over $1 million, and half of that, 49% of that, was dues. And that dropped to the bottom line. That wasn't, there was no commission or any dilution of that money. And so that's why I say, by doing the right thing for the right reason, you make money. It's not what drives you to make these decisions, but it just happens. That happened at the club. Now, as far as your other question was, I think that, you know, we're in an incredible industry. We really have the ability to deliver medicine. Exercise is medicine, and it is the most powerful medicine in the world. And I believe there's a paradigm shift happening right now in healthcare that is recognizing that, and that's going to result in a merger of healthcare and fitness. And the clubs that are involved in that are going to do extremely well. But I think that knowing that, we have a societal obligation to help build and maintain healthy communities. And that doesn't just mean focusing on the fit and well people that come into our club. That means taking a part of our business and shifting it to people that need us the most and can afford us the least.
Well said, Mike. And you and I both share that vision of being more than helping the fit get fitter, and taking community outside the walls of our studios and clubs and really reaching the people who need our programming and services the most. Next slide, please. I want to talk a bit about the how. We've talked about the what, the why, and the what, and really talk about some resources that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of through my work with the IHRSA Foundation, which is the public charity of IHRSA, the Global Health and Fitness Association. And over the years, we've put together resources that really are how-to guides for creating an inclusive fitness club and sector, Mike, you talked about a template that Julie Main gave you when you first started out. So we've worked with UNESCO Chair on Inclusive Fitness, and which has a template called Smash It for an inclusive fitness program. We've worked with the Special Olympics to develop resources and materials for expanding inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities in health and fitness settings. So if our audience were to go to ursafoundation.org, there are a number of resources that are free for download that people can access. I want to highlight just a few steps of a roadmap for moving forward with establishing more inclusion and inclusive fitness practices. Fitness professionals can conduct an audit and really look at the space, the policies, the programs. I mentioned the mission and vision and value statements, and the images and marketing materials. And on ursafoundation.org, there is a universability audit that's available for download. Staff training is important, and fitness professionals, I really identify lack of training as a barrier. And 81% of fitness professionals report that they don't feel adequately equipped to work with people with disabilities. And so supporting staff with pursuing specialty certifications, training staff about people first language when speaking with people with disabilities, not looking at and speaking with their aides, but speaking to them and using people first language, which really shows a great deal of respect. And Mike, you talked about asking your staff and members what they were looking for and having staff come forward with ideas. So surveying staff and members about inclusion and what that might look like in the health and fitness setting, and getting inputs from people with disabilities and groups representing people with disabilities. So those are a few steps in a roadmap of moving forward and what that might look like, and a few resource examples that are ready-made for fitness professionals considering moving down this path or moving further down this path. Mike, you talked about how you got started. If I were a fitness professional listening to us talk today and thinking, I understand the what, I understand the why, I'd like to do more, how can I get started? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say start small. You don't have to move the mountain at one time. The old expression that you can eat an elephant one bite at a time. So start small, pick a chronic illness or injury that you and your staff really are passionate about, and do your homework, learn about it. Take the time to ask for help from others in the industry that have successfully run programs for these populations. Be patient and persistent in building your relationships with key players in your community, like school superintendents, city managers, key physicians, hospital administrators, and CEOs. And also look to professional organizations. One, for example, that we use with cancer is Maple Tree Cancer Alliance. They have an outstanding certification and educational program. So look to organizations like that can make sure that the people that want to get involved in these programs at your club are professionally trained. And then, of course, there are some ADA requirements that you're going to have to meet as well. So you need to understand what those are, and you need to make your spaces in your club accessible to the people that have these disabilities and physical challenges.
Great, thanks, Mike. Next slide, please. I always try to leave audiences with a few action items, and I think one is learning more. And if you haven't had enough of Mike and me talking, the Move to Live More podcast, which features thought leaders like Mike, in health and fitness, also those in healthcare and communities who are working on addressing chronic disease and physical inactivity, what we've given our life's work to. We have several episodes, one including Mike and myself, which focuses on community and creating community in a health and fitness setting and creating community outside and bringing the community out of the four walls and impacting the population health, which Mike mentioned. Another episode, and Mike has talked about the perfect step and spinal cord injuries. I had the honor to interview Hal Hargrave, who started the perfect step, and his conversation about creating a community center for people with spinal cord injuries and taking his mindset about being the best athlete he could possibly be and instilling that in others is a really, really moving episode. And finally, I interviewed a Paralympian, a wheelchair user, who talked about access to physical activity opportunities, not as much in a health and fitness setting or a sports setting, but out in the community as well. So really access is the key there. Next slide, please. So in addition to learning more, health and fitness professionals who are interested in becoming part of a movement, an inclusive fitness movement, can sign the Get Active for All pledge that IHRSA and the IHRSA Foundation have, which says that I commit to the global goal of an inclusive sport, fitness, and physical activity sector that fully includes all adults and children, regardless of ability or disability, age, health status, race, gender orientation, ethnicity, or any other identity or status. And there's a commitment. I will work with industry peers and disability stakeholders seeking opportunities to innovate and adapt practices so that together we further the participation and employment of all people in exercise and sport. You can access this pledge at IHRSA.org and become part of this movement. Next slide, please. A third action health and fitness professionals can take is to get more training and to get certification. I mentioned that fitness professionals identify a lack of training as a barrier. So how do we overcome that barrier? We learn more and certify. And ACSM and NCPAD have a specialty certificate that educates us as fitness professionals on how to safely and effectively work with people with health risks and physical limitations. And the course really looks at disability awareness, facility design, ADA, exercise adaptations, inclusive exercise prescription, and disease and condition specific considerations. And next slide, please. For fourth and final action item, you can ask Mike and me. We're available. We're always speaking, talking, learning, sharing what we know about inclusive fitness practices, and this is the best way to reach us. So I think we are almost exactly at time. I know that Francis is coming back to moderate some Q&A. And once we're done with Q&A, Mike and I will just close.
Awesome. We have a lot of great questions that are coming in. So things, there's questions related to, I'm going to read this question. A lot of organizations promote inclusive or disability fitness as a no experience necessary. What are your thoughts there, Mike and Amy?
I didn't really hear the question. You were breaking.
Yeah. Sorry. Let me try it again.
Yeah. There's some internet issues, I believe.
Let me turn off my video. Maybe that will help. Let me see. How do you feel about clubs and putting inclusive or disability fitness about organizations as a no experience is inclusive fit necessary?
You're breaking up real bad. I can't
see.
I apologize. Did you understand it, Amy?
I only got about half of it.
Yeah.
I can pop in. Here's the question. How do you feel about clubs or organizations promoting inclusive or disability fitness as quote unquote no experience necessary?
I think that's really a very bad way to promote it. I would not support that at all.
Yeah, I think that we've gone through the importance of learning and knowledge and knowing, and I think I talked about in the roadmap, and Mike, you talked about learning and knowing as much as possible.
Yeah, I'll give you one example there if I can, Shelby. Let's say you're working with someone that's got paralysis and they have no feeling from the waist down. You have to be educated to the point that you need to see a DEXA scan and recommend a DEXA scan from that person to make sure that their bones are strong enough so that when you're lifting them and moving them onto a piece of equipment, you don't break a bone and they bleed out. So you absolutely have to have training and you have to be certified with the right kind of certification to enter into this realm of exercise.
Thank you. Totally agree. Here's the next question. How did you train your staff to work with people living with disabilities? Terminology is important. They may not be associated with their disability. They don't have a disability. They're living with it.
Do you want me to take that, Amy?
I can start, and then you have such wonderful examples, Mike. But yeah, I touched on this a little bit when I talked about the roadmap that I worked with URSA and the URSA Foundation to create, really the importance of language. And I think that not only people first language, but really asking people what language they want to be used when referring to their condition, referring to their disability. And it goes to the last question, no experience. It's about learning, knowing, understanding the condition, learning, knowing, understanding the population. And often it's about asking the right questions of the population with empathy and openness to learning even more. Mike, do you want to, I'm sure you have a wonderful example around language.
Well, I would just add that, you have to also make sure your staff understand that all of these issues are protected by HIPAA. So you have to be very careful what you say and don't say. You can't talk about someone's health issues or health challenge in an open environment. So everything you communicate has to be very, very much protected. That's one thing for sure. So.
Okay, we have a couple more questions here. Let's take a look. Could you share your thoughts? There's a comment about identity first language and professionals. Yeah, could you just maybe share a little bit about your thoughts on identity first language?
Amy, I'll let you take that.
Identity first language as opposed to people first language. I want to understand the question. Is there any more, Shelby?
Yeah, it says identity first language is just as important to individual family members and caregivers. Professionals can ask the individuals what they prefer.
Yes, I wholeheartedly support that. I think that's part of the conversation, asking the people, asking their caregivers, and I think we answered that a little bit in the last one, is the openness and the willingness to learn. We have a skill set that we're able to share as exercise professionals, and the person that we're working with has this skill set and the expertise of understanding themselves and their condition.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
Okay, This question is about a care partner. Do you support a care partner joining these individuals at the gym, those who may have home health aide or home respite provider, et cetera? What are your recommendations there?
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to say that while people were in the programs at the club, the access to the club was afforded to their entire family at no cost.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that has always stood out to me in the work that Mike has done and the research that I've done with URSA and the URSA Foundation is inclusion of the family and the community, because it is a family and community journey.
Yeah, let me just say something to that point, and I'll give you an example. The first time we ran our Living Well After Cancer program, there were 8 women in this program. And it became crystal clear to me the very first week of the program that the program couldn't just be about the woman that had breast cancer. It was affecting her whole family. You know, several of these women had young children at home, you know, whether it was a 7-year-old or a 14-year-old that were terribly scared that they might lose their mother. And what had happened was they would pull back and remove themselves. They weren't interacting with their friends as much. They weren't doing their homework. You know, so we realized that we had to open up the club to the entire family and give them back an opportunity, a home away from home, to come and be kids again and you know, have some time to themselves and have fun.
Thank you. Here's another question. Looking into your crystal ball that I know both of you have and understanding the wave of baby boomers and how exercise is integral to independent living, how can exercise professionals best prepare for this change?
Well, I can say this, we've focused on baby boomers now. You know, we're living longer, and hopefully we're going to be healthier, and we're going to embrace the fact that I think COVID, for example, scared everybody to death. You know, no one wants to be shut down and locked in again. And I think there's a focus and an interest on wellness today, and also the digital delivery of fitness and wellness programs like I've never seen before. You know, like I said earlier, I think there is an absolute paradigm shift happening in healthcare that realizes that the system is broken. I don't even know how it's sustainable. When you look at the numbers of the increase in healthcare, I'll give you 2 examples. No matter what period of time you look at, if the cost to do something exceeds your gross domestic product, you have a problem financially. In the last 50 years, the cost of healthcare has risen 820%. And during that same period of time, the entire GDP of the country has only risen 168% and labor 16%. How is that sustainable? And when you look at a recent study, I think of a few years ago, that the World Health Organization put out, it looked at the 11 wealthiest industrial countries in the world, and it looked at healthcare. And the United States, out of those 11, was last. It was 11th in healthcare accessibility, the delivery of healthcare, and the outcomes of healthcare. So I think obviously we need to look at other things to add into the treatment of people with these chronic problems. And I think exercise and nutrition, there's so much scientific data behind it that it's got to be it's got to be an adjunctive standard of care for everyone going through any kind of treatment for a chronic health issue. It's my opinion.
Yeah, I would just add that Mike and I have been presenting on exercise as medicine for as long as we've been presenting on inclusive fitness. And I do think, you know, I have some pessimistic days, but overall, I'm optimistic that we're moving toward a real recognition of the linkage between exercise and physical and mental health and well-being, and to the point about the crystal ball and the greater consumer interest, need, demand for services that support healthy aging, independence, and better quality of life as we all age, I think bodes well for our health and fitness industry. We have a really, really important role to play in that healthy aging and quality of life paradigm.
Okay. We have time for one more question, and then we'll have just kind of hear from both of you on any parting thoughts that you might have. So this comment says that you spoke about money being an influencer and having family having the access with no cost. So the question is, how does this help a small business owner running a gym versus a large corporate gym?
Well, we were a single brick and mortar facility. We had a large membership base. I don't think it really matters. I think if you spend $1 and you get $4 back, I mean, to run the programs we ran, and the only one that was fee-based was the Spinal Cord and Paralysis Center because it was a franchise. The other programs were totally free. And, the kids and the spouses participated in everything we did at the club at no cost. That included, for kids, 13 weeks of summer camp, field trips, lunches, breakfast with Santa, everything we did. And if we spent, let's just say, a figure of $100,000 a year for those programs, and I told you that, over 500,000 of that dollars came from our member attrition or member retention, it obviously paid for itself. So, you have to fundraise, you have to be creative, you have to work with other organizations in your community and some not-for-profits that will get behind and help you with these things. But it was for years and years, to the day the club was sold in 2020. It was a huge success, and we made lots of money for our shareholders and owners.
I'll just come back to one thing Mike said at the very beginning of our house section, to start small. It could be a very small program. It could be one staff member, one studio operator, one solo fitness professional who feels very passionate about one particular condition, and to start there. And I think, Mike, you're a bit of a legend with the Claremont Club, and I've worked on panels with other operators who had more means, and many audience members said, well, I don't see myself in that. How can I do that? And I do think that it's possible, right, Mike, with starting small. One program, one condition, one champion can have a real impact.
Sure. I mean, what does it do to a club's bottom line to bring 5 or 10 people in a year and offer a program for cancer or for Parkinson's? You use your cycling studio and you have a cycling for Parkinson's program, and you offer it free to 5 or 10 families. There's not a lot of cost in doing that.
Thank you. So just one parting question for each of you to answer. What do you want our exercise professionals to know, and how to get started today in making exercise accessible to everyone?
Amy, you take it first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the 4 action points that I left all the fitness professionals with: is learn more, sign the pledge, and access the free resources that are available, that are a roadmap for getting started today. You can take stock of your programming today. You can do an audit of your infrastructure today. you can ask your fellow fitness professionals if they feel very strongly about serving a type of population today. And then I think longer term is upskilling and specialty certifications.
And I would just say, I would agree with what Amy said, and I would add this. This is a wonderful time of the year. It's a time of giving. Get with your management team, propose this out to them, pick a chronic illness that they can get behind and start small, and make it a pledge that in the new year, you're going to start a program. And you're going to pick one chronic illness or chronic injury, and you're going to start with that, and you're going to start in a small way.
Thank you both so much. We truly appreciate your time, just as ACSM staff, but then also the attendees that are here today listening, not just for the hour that you gave, but for the time that you put in to your life with this work. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone. At this time, we're at the top of the hour, so we will stop the webinar. But again, everyone will get this recording tomorrow following. So thank you again and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.